PsyJournals Live. Подкаст о психологии из первых уст. В эфире интервью с авторами научных исследований, репортажи о мероприятиях, лекции и книжные новинки.
So, few words about I'm representing a portal of psychological issues, issues for scientific and for practical use in psychology and related sciences. So this interview will be for that portal, and this will be in English and translated in Russian. Of course, I will show it to you before publishing this. And the first question is about you. Can you represent yourself about what you are doing? What is your some background, scientific background, and practical?
Yes. Yeah. So I started my studies a long time ago in learning research. I was very interested in very basic learning, like Pavlovian learning and instrumental learning and so on. And then I moved slowly to look these very same things using physiological measures, autonomic nervous system methods for learning about emotional learning, and then brain measures for learning how the brain is associated to the different cognitive aspects of interest to us. And then very slowly I moved to look difficulties in learning among children who face this type of things, and we were becoming very interested in reading, because this is the most commonly compromised skill of children, and we wanted to learn how to identify these children early on, and also to understand what is the problem when we face reading problems in serious sense, or dyslexia. And this ended up us to start this type of follow-up study from birth of those children who are at familial risk. It means genetic risk of facing difficulties. If one parent is has had a dyslexia, the child born to this parent is about has a probability of about 50-50 facing reading problems.
Of course.
We had hundreds of such families where born to be followed children had this risk, and 100 families who most likely didn't have this type of risk on the basis of our initial choosing of the to be followed individuals. So these 200 children were followed very in detail from birth to adulthood now, and we have made our last assessments during 8th grade, and we know practically everything associated to what is preceding the reading problems which children typically face on school age. And this has been made using all imaginable methods, from brain research to behavioral and neuropsychological and also intervention type of methods, which are looking the problem via dynamic assessment. And we have learned how to identify children who need help, and the most recent development has been the building a digital learning environment, game-based learning environment, which is instructing the basic reading skill to everyone who needs help in learning to read.
And if to go back in your speech, little one, you talk about several types of methods, several types of techniques you're working on this lecture. So, for example, it's like neurophysiology methods, like neuropsychology. And for example, among neurophysiology methods, do you use like EEG, MEG, or something like that else? Yeah,
for these very young babies, where the recording started immediately after birth, we used EEG-based event-related potential methods, with using which we methods were showing the risk immediately after birth of this half who will end up to problems. Okay, then we of course started using language-related methods following the language development, spoken language development, how they are comprehending and how they are producing language, using different ways to observe that and assess language skills.
Assessing productive language, expressive language.
Yeah, so we could have like vocabulary measures and parents noticing all the words children are expressing and crossing all the words they understand so on. And had video lessons for the parents to do it every week so that we could follow the proceedings in learning to speak.
And what about neuropsychological methods? Maybe have you heard about Luria methodology in Russia?
In a sense,
is it connected?
Yes, in certain age we use so-called Nepsy method, which is Nepsy is based on Lurian's theory and built for being used for children from age about 6 up.
6 and up, yeah.
Yeah. And this type of methods has been applied in this follow-up study.
Okay, and what about that game you were telling today on this meeting with our professors? How do you think? What is the stage of distributing this game among the world? What is the current stage of this?
It's fully developed for transparent writings in many transparent writing environments like Finnish, German, and Spanish and so on. Swedish, where the connection between spoken and written is consistent at a letter phoneme level. Making it very easy to implement this type of games for learning the basic reading skill. But for such languages, alphabetic languages like English, which has no consistency between letters and sounds at the level of the small units, we have implemented a learning game which uses larger units.
Yes.
If we use large enough units, they are always consistent, behaving consistently. Typically it is 3 or more letters in row which always are sounded the same way, and this way we can teach also English language. And of course we have also started developing non-alphabetic support for readers of non-alphabetic writings like Chinese.
Or for example African. Or it's not. It's for example African children.
Yeah, and for Africans they have very consistent writing. All the new writings they have of their own languages are built by missionaries who have used Latin as a model. And you know, Latin and Greek are very consistently written. So all these languages have been getting Bibles which are written using this very consistent writing system, and this means that African kids could learn to read by using the Finnish game because the sounds are the same, the letters have the same sound.
So it's alphabetical.
Yeah, they are alphabetical always.
And for example, some Asian languages like
there are some Asian languages we have only approached in a real sense the Chinese, where we have a so-called pinning version ready, which is the first step children in China, mainland China, are doing. They learn to connect the written symbols to sounds, but the Chinese characters are often connected to meaning, directly to meaning. So some of the items are like pictures of the thing. So it's a relatively complex way how the characters of Chinese writing have built. They contain meaning-related cues and sound-related cues, but the number of such symbols is very large, meaning that learning to read Chinese takes many years. In typical teaching in school environment they need at least 6 years to learn the very basic reading skill and ability to start guessing what is written in a newspaper.
I see.
But the number of different characters which may occur in a written newspaper is much larger than the number of items they learn in school. They may learn about 6,000, but they may be 20,000.
Yeah, I see. A lot of this.
Yeah, they have to guess everything else, but not they know.
And for example, for Hebrew, Israeli language, I know, as I studied Hebrew, I know that there is only not non-vowels, non-vowels written.
Yeah.
And vowels are not written, but they, for example, if I say Ani garbe Moskva, it's like I can say Ane garbe Moskva, Ane garube Moskva, and only non-vowels will be written.
Yeah.
So what is about this language? It's not alphabetic.
We have not implemented Hebrew in to our GraphoGame. This is still in the waiting list, but of course this could be done.
And what about Russian language? For example?
Russian has not been implemented yet, but there are some. We have taken some starting steps with Elena Krikorenko and her colleagues, and now we hopefully will be able to start a real development so that we would get the Russian version ready relatively soon.
Maybe what do you think, or what do you feel about collaboration with Moscow State University of Psychology and Education, where I have been today?
Guess,
can it be in this project as, for example, executor, or for example as an expert? What do you think about
We need experts from linguistics or phonetician if we are wanting to have the optimal group of experts. Then we need someone who is very well informed about how children are taught and how reading instruction is working here, to find out how the children are behaving in such a situation. And then of course educational psychologist and the neuropsychologist would be good to be there, so that we have all the expertise collected.
I'm a neuropsychologist. I can work on this.
They promise to build some kind of starting point for making us able to proceed fast.
Okay, and you think that this university can help you on this, or can collaborate you on this?
Yeah, I have been told that this is possible.
And what do you think about some publishing activity with this university projects? As you heard about, we have some journals.
Yeah, always before we can let this type of game to be distributed to wider usage, we have to have a very convincing empirical evidence that it really is well implemented, effectively helping, and so on.
Evidence-based.
This means that so like in Africa we mostly have at least 5 international papers published before we can imagine we could start distributing the game to kids.
And I would like to ask about what is estimated, for example, as you know, the experience of distributing this game in some other countries, for example in in Germany, some other countries. What is estimated time of from 1 year or 5 years?
Yeah, it depends on the group. We have had practically no ideal cases yet. In most cases we have had to proceed in such a way that I have been supervising a doctoral student who is who has made the empirical part of the validation, and this of course is a very slow way to go, but I would say that in ideal case we may not need more than 2 years. So the implementation of the content may take a few weeks if we have good people doing that, and the empirical validation will not take more than 1 year if it's made in optimal way. Big random samples which are getting the support of reading or math skills at the same time, so same attention, and we see that those who are getting the reading content are learning to read, and those who are getting math content are not equally developing in reading skill and so on.
So like subdivisions and some sort of, and then some, of course, some statistical work like ANOVA and something.
Yeah, we have to compare the changes which we get from these two groups.
And of course, sorry to disturb you, I just want to ask more and more. And of course, maybe you know that Russia has a lot of nationalities, and these nationalities are have its own specifics even in Russian language pronunciation. For example, Caucasus nationalities have its own pronunciation and its own mental understanding of Russian language. For example, some Siberians have also, for example, some knows. What do you think about that?
You are speaking about Russian language in the same sense that the British people are speaking about Oxford English, meaning that one has to have a model way to sound the language, and I suppose it might be possible to consider that reading instruction is given taking into account that they at the same time learn the model sounding of Russian, and this way we may not need several versions of the game for different individuals, but one version which is instructing reading of the model Russian sounding.
Okay, that was a question just about thinking of sample. And I understand that there has to be like a model Russian language which has to be learned by pupils in schools, of course. But for example,
it might mean that it takes more time from those who are not speaking in this model language way, but some other ways, and the training time may be longer for them.
A little longer, or for example, some you know that some education level of education in for example rural areas or some big cities.
This teaching
can
is
be
starting at the beginning of the first grade. Or if your first grade is starting at 6, then maybe at 7. Yeah, if it's starting at 7, then it's a good time to start using this game. Of course, what might affect is how much these children have been read to, but it mostly affects only motivation, not too much about the content knowledge. But I must say that in real life, children who have been read to a lot know already something about letters. They somehow implicitly are storing certain rules, like they know that a word cannot start from the repeated consonant, which is telling them something which they already know when they start learning to read.
Like for them it's obvious. And maybe the last part of our interview question: what is you have been yesterday? You have been in the Image Center, in the Center for Neurocognitive Sciences. Today, you have been in a Federal Resource Center for ASD children. And what are your general impressions of that? So you you had a brief view of our different substructures. How can I think these substructures maybe can be included in your work, or maybe you just have some impressions on
I believe that they are very good environments for developing this game. They are very comparable to whatever international centers of comparable content. So no problems. Like this MEG lab is very well equipped for doing not only this basic reading research, which we are first of all needing, but also the next step of looking how the brains are doing, learning what happens in the brain when children are learning to read, and so on. So they are able to make very ambitious research associated to reading acquisition in the context of the GraphoGame.
And maybe in federal centers there can be some specialists who can be some experts in there.
I'm
because some ASD children have
absolutely sure that you have the sufficient expertise available which is needed for this for proceeding in an optimal way in this development of the graph.
Or as we have some network of resource centers, we can have some inquiries from them on this, like network inquiries, and which can develop our sample work on this, maybe.
Yes.
And the last question is mine interest, as you worked with some, you said with brain mechanism start work, and you in your talk, in your lecture today, you said about some event-related potentials. So, do you use in some dyslexia study? Do you use mismatch negativity paradigm by Russ anatomy? Do you use it in your work? What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is quite possible that you can, if you are interested in looking the differentiation in the mind of the sounds, which might be difficult for some kids, how this game is making the differentiation more easy to them as a function of the training.
Because as I remember, for example, in 2011 I made paperwork about salmalin. Maybe I can't quite. This is Finnish.
Yeah, Rita Salmelin, yes.
Salmalin, Rita Salmelin.
Yeah.
And she had a work about language, about neurophysiological methods, like review work.
Yes.
And my university grade work was to translate this and to translate this and to theoretically implement this on Russian. Simple. And I remember that she had examples of implementing mismatch negativity paradigm on reading skills. For example, if you have a sentence which has unexpected ending.
Yeah, so
like the pizza was too hot.
400, yes. Yes, this is, and we are nowadays collaborating very closely with her. Yes, because we are now trying to find out what happens in the brain among those who are most resistant to learn to read. And she is the leader of the brain imaging part of this project. Then we have geneticists and big data people and GraphoGame people and neuropsychologists and developmental psychologists and special educators involved in this study.
And she's working in Aalto, or it's not Aalto?
This brain research part is occurring in Aalto. And the special education part is occurring in Helsinki University and everything else in our university. And these resistant kids can be found only from south coast of Finland, because the density of people is deep enough for finding these sufficient number of these most resistant kids.
So south part of Finland is the most
we need
high
at
population?
least several millions population to find these most resistant kids, even if we are able to find everyone who is so resistant.
And what about this? I understood that you talk about modular languages, but as one of maybe my interested is ethnographical interested. What is about not how you call them, these guys who is living on the north part of Finland?
They are Finnish speakers, and we accept in this study only Finnish speakers. We have some Swedish speakers and some migrants, but of course for this type of study we don't mix the designs, having different kinds of kids.
Like Karelian people.
Yeah, they have a slightly different Finnish there. Yes.
So, but it is important for them to comprehend Finnish exact.
Yeah, I don't believe that this is very much
Different.
affecting very much. Like dialects are spoken everywhere in Finland, and like kids are using a little bit different dialect in Helsinki area than they use in Jyväskylä area. But this type of issues are not affecting too much because in school environment, teachers have to use the model in Finnish.
The model of Finnish
and
language.
all the programs of TV and radio which are meant for Finnish children are having only standard Finnish language, no dialects.
You know, I just remembered one study of Luria. It is not about language, but it is demonstrating some principle of modular and non-modular perception. He in early 30s he had a study when there was Soviet Union, and he with his colleagues went to Uzbekistan. It is in Middle Asia, and they made a study about perception forms, different forms, 3D forms or like 2D forms, like on paper, and they had results of that. Some only Uzbek people, not any other or from other districts, don't understand illusions, like Kanizsa Square, for example. You know that Kanizsa Square, like a Pac-Mans, 3 Pac-Mans, which is depicted like a triangle. Yes, like this Pac-Man, and this Pac-Man. A Pac-Man, I mean like a circle with like a pizza part. So 3 of these are making a triangle by itself. So Uzbek people doesn't understand these illusions. So, and he, as it was Soviet Union times, he wrote to his friend. It was in Stalin times. He wrote to his friend in Moscow, Uzbek has no illusions. So, and it was such, such bad for his political life. So guys from Soviet Union government would like to get him in a jail, because he just wrote the results of experiment to his colleague in Moscow, and they wrong interpreted that. So it is about like not language dialect, but about some specifics.
Подкаст PsyJournals.ru о психологии из первых уст. Спасибо, что слушаете нас.